Welcome to SSI Meetup. Today we will have a very special SSI Meetup because it will be myself presenting the latest Decentralized Digital Identity report in Spanish and Portuguese that we just prepared in collaboration with SSI Meetup, Alianza Blockchain Ibero-America, and Blockchain España. This is the second edition of this report, and we're really proud to bring it out. We published the first edition last year, and this year I think we have improved it a lot, and we covered many more aspects, and I think that's really interesting for everyone. So I hope you will enjoy it, and also enjoy this presentation about what we have to share. Before we go into more details, just quickly, as always, for everyone who didn't watch any previous SSI meetups, this is SSI Meetup number 50, and the goal of SSI Meetup is to empower global SSI communities, and this means for us that this is open for everyone. If you're an individual, a person, an association, or anything else, you can reuse the material that we create here. We share everything with the creative by share-alike license, which means you can reuse it in any way you want. You just need to give credit back to the person presenting and to SSI Meetup. Today, both of those things is myself, which is Alex Preukschat, and yeah, please give also credit back to SSI Meetup if you use these slides. We do record these webinars, so you can watch them later on video. You can also have a look at SlideShare where we upload these slides, and you can also use the slides that we prepare for each session and download them and use them around the world, which is actually happening a lot. People all over the world are using this, which makes us really happy, and that's basically the goal, because we want you to help you to spread the word about SSI. Yeah, and this is just the starting point for what we plan to do here for this report, which we plan to do every year. We published the first edition of this report in 2019 in Spanish only, and also in collaboration with SSI Meetup, Alianza Blockchain Ibero-America, and Blockchain España. And this year we decided to do it in Spanish and in English. So this is the 2020 edition. You can download it for free on the link that you see here. And yeah, and I hope you enjoy it, and I will give some of the highlights of what we learned with this report. If you have any questions during this presentation or at the end of this presentation, please just let me know, and I will try to answer them as best as possible, because I coordinated the whole setup of this report. So in general, I should be able to do that. For the Spanish edition, it was the same as for the as in 2019. It was Lucas Carmona and myself who worked on this. And for the 2020 English edition, which is the first English edition, and we also had Daniel Paramo helping us, who's a guy from Ecuador living in the United States, and who has been working in the decentralized digital identity space for a while, I think also with Burning Machine, and he's collaborating with some other companies right now. And we had the help from Philip Sheldrake and Alex Waltz, who helped us in editing work for this report, and then also Inigo Moledo, who collaborated on all these reports. So thank you to all of them. What is the goal of this report? So basically, this is the first type of report that we've done in English like this. We haven't seen anything like this in the market. We hope that we will be able to do this for other regions in the world. We're trying to do it for Australia or maybe Asia or maybe Europe, I don't know, but at least this is the Ibero-American one. I will now get into the details what Ibero-American means for us. So, but the goal is, one, we want to create market intelligence, basically make it really transparent about what is happening in SSI in Ibero-America. We want to promote the growth of SSI in Ibero-America, and we also want to inform about what is available. So those are our goals, and that's what we hope that these reports will achieve. Ibero-America, if you're not familiar with this term, is basically the Spanish and Portuguese speaking countries in Latin America. And it basically includes all North, Central, and South American countries, like going from Mexico all the way down to Argentina and Chile, including Brazil. And sometimes it does include Portugal and Spain, sometimes not. In our case, we included Portugal and Spain for our definition of Ibero-America, and that's basically what you see in this map. And we included countries with projects and countries with communities. So with countries with projects, what we do mean is that some companies or public institutions did some kind of proof of concept or have their own kind of platform with which they're trying to do decentralized digital identity or SSI. And yeah, and those are the countries where we've seen this in Brazil, Mexico, Spain, Argentina, Colombia. and a transnational organization, which is the Inter-American Development Bank, which is a development bank owned by the governments of the Spanish and Portuguese speaking countries of Latin America. And they also have as a member the United States and some European countries that are funders. I think also China is part of that. But the majority shareholding of this bank is owned by the Latin American countries. And it is like one of the biggest actors in the region, and they're quite active in the blockchain SSI space too. And then we have countries with communities. What we mean with this is that there has been either something happening in terms of education or some small communities or some research going on, and there you have the list of those countries where something has been happening. You can read all the details in the report. I will just cover the highlights. And one of the goals that we try to transmit in this report is that identity is something that has started as a community for a long time, at least since 2005, probably since 2000. The whole movement where they've been trying to create an identity layer for the internet, which has been missing since the creation of the internet. That is a famous phrase from Kim Cameron, who was the former Microsoft chief identity architect. He just retired last year, but he's still very active. And this is all part of two communities that have been really like driving or creating as part of the communities everything that is really relevant for SSI. So, and we always like to emphasize that. One of them is the Internet Identity Workshop, which takes place twice a year in San Francisco, and then Rebooting Web of Trust, which is taking place also twice a year in different places around the world. It took place last year in February in Barcelona, in Spain, and now it was supposed to be held in next week in Buenos Aires in Argentina, but it has been kind of canceled because of the whole coronavirus thing, so that's a pity. But I hope they will do more things in the Latin American region, and that's one of the reasons why we also tried to do this in English, because we wanted to make all this information about what is available in the Ibero-American space for everyone. So please check out these two thought leaders conferences, thought thinking spaces that are really useful to know. Solve 7 identity for us means allowing people to control and manage their identity in a digital way that enables trust while preserving privacy, which that's something very complex. And Christopher Allen, who's the founder also of Rebooting Web of Trust, he summarized the 10 SSI principles, I think it was in 2016, where he basically said that all those principles that you see here are summarized like protection, persistence, minimization, and basically you can summarize all these in 10 headlines, which is it's about security, that you can control your information in a secure way, and that you can control it, and it's portable, that you can move it from Facebook to Twitter, and from Twitter to something else, and so on. You know, that would be the ideal situation. And I really recommend you to read this article. It's a reference piece, The Path to Self-Sovereign Identity, where he describes in detail how digital identity evolved, how we moved from centralized identity to federated identity to user-focused identity to what is now hopefully the new upcoming model for self-sovereign identity. And yeah, so that's a reference reading. And in the report, we summarize these principles because that's the reference point. Because SSI, more than a technology, is really an ideology in the sense that the community of SSI has accepted these 10 principles as the main principles. So not everything that is branded as SSI is usually SSI. Because if it doesn't fulfill all these 10 principles, it really isn't. But of course, this is a dynamic thing. We see these discussions in the blockchain world, blockchain versus DLT, and many other communities for different things. And for SSI, we'll have to see how that evolves. I myself do try to differentiate between SSI and decentralized digital identity when I think it's not really SSI. And there are plenty of examples really where you can call it decentralized digital identity, and that's why we call this report also Decentralized Digital Identity in the Ibero-American space, because SSI is a really complex thing, and it's also very difficult to get consensus about what really SSI is for the time being, based on all the many different players we have. What we in the summary for the report, we have shared 4 SSI challenges that we see in Ibero-America. So The first two, we believe, are very global, and they apply to everyone in the world. And that means that the first one is that we believe that the blockchain ecosystem is still very focused on the challenges and things that interest the blockchain ecosystem, and they should be more involved in the SSI ecosystem, which is a very strong network and its own community, but we don't see much of that happening. And we see that a lot of the blockchain world, and I say this myself, like someone who has been like in the blockchain world for 6 years now, that this discussion very often is still about nodes and consensus and money and value and all those things. And we believe that the blockchain community really struggles to understand what SSI is about, and there needs to be some humbleness about approaching this in a way with a learning attitude, instead of thinking that the community knows all the answers to everything. And I think these two communities are very complementary, but the SSI community hasn't been too active in the blockchain world, and even though it has been inspired by the blockchain movement, and the blockchain space is really not very active. I think the main player in the space from the blockchain world is Uport from Consensus, because they have a full token background with Consensus and everything, and they really come from this ecosystem. And two of the leaders from Uport, Pele and Andres Junge, they're both based in South America. Andres, he's from Chile. And while Pele, I think he used to be based in Nicaragua, there's not really a big ecosystem for SSI there, but neither is the big ecosystem in Chile. But Andres Junge is like one of the famous guys in the ecosystem for SSI, and also very active in this whole space. So I wanted to emphasize that. And then the other part of this world is that we also have, that is very specific also to the Ibero-American world, but I see this happening everywhere in the world, is that the status quo rigid world view still struggles a lot to accept, understand, and learn all the progress that has been made in the SSI space. So it would be really good if we see that governments and corporations get much deeper into the whole thinking that has been done in the SSI community from the last 5, 10, 15 years, because there's a lot to learn and to absorb, a lot of pitfalls to avoid, and we believe that's really important. And then number 3 and 4 are like really very specific, while it probably happens all over the world, very specific to the Ibero-American world. From our point of view, SSI and in general, all innovations like blockchain is very often used as a marketing tool to position companies as modern and fresh and dynamic, but not really with the real intention to create disruption or innovation. And that's a real challenge, because the amounts of money and the financing that is on that level too, and that doesn't allow entrepreneurs to flourish in this region differently to Northern Europe or North America or Asia. And yeah, so we really hope that there will be more financing, more support for entrepreneurs in this region if they want this to happen, and less talk and more doing, because that's clearly one of the challenges that you see in the space. In terms of the most active projects or the most relevant projects, we have them listed here. In the report, you have all these listed as in terms of population. So Brazil is the first country, and then Mexico is the next, because those have the biggest populations. But here I have listed them as in terms of relevance. So Spain, from all the Ibero-American countries, is the most active one. And I have highlighted 3 of those projects. There are many different ones, but 3 of the main relevant ones. So Validated ID is really interesting. It's a PKI company, and that has understood that SSI might be really disruptive for the business, and they have created a small unit where they explore all these SSI ideas. And this is a really interesting company, because they have their own cash flow about how they finance their SSI activities, and they're kind of investing into the future for them. There's a very similar example in Germany from a company called Isatus, which is in a very similar position. So that one is interesting. Then we have Ident3, which is a company from Barcelona, but headquartered in Zug in Switzerland, and founded by Jordi Ballina. they're very strong, with a strong focus on zero knowledge proofs, also very much associated to the Catalan ecosystem. Yeah, and it's clearly one of the strong players in the Ibero-American world, and very closely related to the Ethereum ecosystem, which so just comes clearly from the token crypto ecosystem, and they're trying to create like full censorship resistant identity solutions for the future. So we will see how that goes. And then we have finally Alastria, which is completely different to the first and second example in Spain. This is a big multinational consortium in Spain, which was created initially in 2017 by the main multinational companies from Spain. And they have grown since then. Initially, they had different goals, but they've moved clearly into decentralized digital identity over the last 18 months. And they're very active in lobbying in the Spanish government, but also in the European Union and in proposing governance frameworks. So also one of the interesting players to follow, to see what is happening in Spain and a little bit in Europe, because as part of the Spanish DLT community, they are part of that movement of associations that try to push for that. I have a question coming in here from Uya, and she's asking, can you go into a bit more detail into the difference between decentralized digital identity and SSI? Yeah, sure, I can do that. So basically, I mean, this is my own personal definition, because there's no consensus in the market, because as you see in the blockchain market, everyone tries to own the blockchain term. So everyone says, I'm a blockchain guy. And blockchain might be different things. It might mean, oh, I do something with Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., which is the definition I do use. When I talk about blockchain, I mean Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. I mean public blockchains. But then you have people that say, no, I do blockchain, but they really mean public permission chains, or they mean what they call private chains, which I usually call DLTs, which are distributed ledger technologies. So having explained this, the conflict for the term hasn't become so big, but I see it happening already in the community, where people say, oh, I do self-sovereign identity. And then when you study the architecture, you see, well, okay, the node setup is really that you have 1 or 2 or 3 single nodes that control the whole network. So everything will have to run through that. And I don't know, the credentials, where are they stored? Are they stored in a cloud that is controlled by someone? Or is it really a wallet or cloud that is controlled by the user? So you need to analyze all those different aspects. And I think the discussion about how to make the most fully decentralized SSI solution available in the market hasn't been happening enough. And I think the SSI world is kind of in the middle between what I call the DLT and the blockchain world. So what I mean with this is that in the blockchain world, historically and ideologically, they've been driving for full decentralization. And with full decentralization, I mean like an aspiration of having full decentralization, where no single entity could create censorship, could create control over the system, which means censorship resistance. So basically, they want to have full censorship resistance. In the DLT world, that's different. In the DLT world, the thinking is that, well, we can have some known entities that control the network, but they will control themselves between each other. In the blockchain world, they don't trust that works. In the DLT world, they trust that works. And that also has a lot of influence in the SSI world. While blockchain is a small thing of SSI, because SSI is a huge community, and also technology-wise, blockchain is a small piece of SSI. It then really depends how you develop all these things on what we call the trust over IP model. So the trust over IP model, which has been developed by Drummond Reed, you have different levels. And on the first level, you have the blockchain. On the second level, you have the communication level or layer. And then on the third one, you have the verifiable credentials layer. So it depends how those are set up. You might not have censorship resistance, yes or no. We don't know yet. So, but we're writing about this stuff in our upcoming self-sovereign identity book that we will be publishing with Manning. And we have a chapter dedicated to the subject, and I think it will be increasing in interest. But if you check out, for example, what is happening in the European Union, the ambition of many is to do SSI in such a way that it will be run by government nodes of all the members of the European Union, and they call it SSI. So some people maybe in the SSI ecosystem wouldn't call it SSI, but I think we will see over time how this is deployed, and it will, as it often is, probably be also political war about who survives and who wins that whole discussion. So, and yeah, if you think that answers your question, let me know. Yeah, it's okay, cool. And yeah, and then we have those are the Spanish ones, and then we have, of course, the IDB. IDB is the Inter-American Development Bank. That's one of the main development institutions in Latin America, as I explained in the beginning, owned by the governments of Latin America. They're the main shareholders, but they also have the participation of the United States and the European Union. I think the Chinese also, headquartered in Washington, D.C. in the United States, and a very strong player in the sense that because for the time being, there's not really that much money moving in this ecosystem. But if I remember correctly, they have a budget of around $11 million overall for the ID lab, and they're developing a solution which is called LAC-chain, which is the Latin American Caribbean chain, which because IDB works in the Latin American countries and the Caribbean countries. And there we explain it in detail in the report because we got that input also from the IDB lab and the LAC-chain team, where they described the different layers they're working on, and they clearly want to push for identity or decentralized identity in the Latin American space, and financing different projects. They're financing different projects in the region. We just have one more question coming in here. Eden is asking, also Gatakas is in Spain. Yes, Gatakas is in Spain, but I have not included it as one of the main projects from Spain. But you're in the report. If you check out the report, you can see that you're included in the report. Also a question from Felipe. He's asking, where's the lab? I think if they have a distributed team from IDB, which is in Argentina. I think they have some people in Spain collaborating with them, and also in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I think they have a team that is in different places. But I'll talk now about Didi, which is from Argentina now in a moment. But yeah, I think they have teams across Latin America. But at least I know people in Spain, in Argentina, and in Washington, D.C. But I'm sure that they have people in different countries of Latin America. So yeah, so IDB is clearly one of the strong players, and they have also strong relationship with Alastria. And yeah, so they're like different communities where people collaborate, and you will see, for example, that IDENT3 is more part of the Ethereum ecosystem. Validated ID plays in different playgrounds. Alastria and IDB, they collaborate on different levels. But Validated ID is also a member for Alastria. So that's the different groups of communities within this Ibero-American SSI space where people kind of work together. And then we have Brazil. In Brazil, we have CPQD, which is one of the main research and development groups in Latin America. And they've done different projects that we highlight in this report. We also, Brazil, and this happens to many Latin American countries like in Mexico or Brazil. While these countries are huge in terms of population, they should have much more activity. So Brazil, in comparative terms, they're doing quite well for SSI, which is a very new market, and in reality, the Ibero-American world is not that strong, and the strongest player within the Ibero-American world is clearly Spain, from my point of view. But yeah, I would say that if we take IDB out, Brazil would be clearly the next player, and at least from what we've seen in the market. And so we have one more question coming in here. If you know people in Washington, D.C., please let me know. That is where I'm based. Yeah, I don't know him personally, but I know that Marcos Allende, it's a Spanish guy. He's based in Washington, D.C. And he's one of the drivers behind LAC-chain and BitLab. So yeah, I think he's a good person to reach out, and I'm pretty sure that his contact details are available in the net. If not, I can try to help you. Yeah, and then we have Argentina. In Argentina, we have the NGO Bitcoin Argentina, which is a NGO to promote decentralized ecosystems in Argentina. They're also a member of La Alianza Blockchain Ibero-America. And they have a project that is also supported by the Inter-American Development Bank, which is DIDI, it's DIDI. And this is a project that has been going on for at least 60 months. And the lead developer has recently joined a local project in Argentina, which is called RSK, Rootstock. He will be working with them until June, and they are actually looking to hire a new CTO for the project. And this is a project where many different companies are participating, but the main partner of this project is the Inter-American Development Bank. So that's a little bit to highlight, at least what I personally see as the main actors or the biggest actors in the space in the Ibero-American world. Then you have, of course, many other initiatives going all the way down to Mexico and Honduras, no, not Honduras, sorry, Costa Rica, etc. But these are the main ones today. There are also some projects that are really interesting that we cannot talk about today because they haven't been released, but we know that they exist and that they're ongoing. And then what has been really interesting that I would like to highlight, and that is also part of the report, is that in Spain there was a project by the Catalan government which is called Identity Cat, and then the Spanish government released the royal decree which basically said that SSI solution could not be accepted legally in the Spanish jurisdiction, which kind of kills the purpose of SSI. And many suspect that that was a political decision because of the regional conflict we have in Spain between the central government and the Catalan government. So, and that was kind of an interesting example how politics gets mixed up into technology. And I also personally believe that this will get strong over time, because as technology changes the perception about what is possible and what is not possible, and where people start and where governments start and stop, this will increase probably over time. And finally, just wanted to highlight research terms. So research team. So we had myself and Lucas Carmona, who participated in 2019, and this year we also had Daniel Paramo, who helped us translate the report from Spanish to English, and Inyo Moledo, who helped us edit the Spanish report, and he also collaborates on all the things we do in the Alianza Blockchain Ibero-America, Blockchain Spain, and then we had Philip Sheldrake and Alex Waltz, who helped us in the English editing. So thank you to all these guys. This has been possible. And our research sponsors, as I said, were Blockchain España, Alianza Blockchain Ibero-America, and SSI Meetup. You can download it for free here. And if there are any questions left, I would be happy to answer them. It took us about 30 minutes, but I didn't want to cover like all the small details of the report. My main goal really was just to highlight the key aspects of the report to see if that's of interest for you. And if you have any questions, I can cover them now. If not, we will have our next SSI meetup upcoming. Well, we have a number of them upcoming, but the next one will be about the European SSI framework, where we will have a presentation from Reeks from TNO, which is a Dutch research group in the Netherlands, and they will be telling us more about the financing that is being made available by the European Union for startups and small mid-sized companies in the European Union to develop SSI solutions. So really recommend you to check that out, because the European Union is really active. If you want to learn more about the next upcoming SSI meetups, please join our newsletter. Just go to the website and sign up. You have it in the bottom left to check it out. Join our Telegram group or Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think those are all the channels. And yeah, if there are no other questions, I hope this is helpful. We will try to keep this growing over time, and hopefully also do it for other regions of the world. And thank you so much for joining us today.